Love is supposed to be pure, beautiful, and eternal. But what happens when the very people you trust the most betray you in the worst way imaginable? When the love of your life walks away straight into the arms of your best friend? I never imagined that my world would shatter so completely, nor did I ever think I'd find a way to turn my pain into the most shocking comeback of all. Let me take you back to where it all began, where love, trust, and betrayal collided in a way that would change my life forever. For the longest time, I believed I had it all. I had a beautiful relationship with my boyfriend, Daniel, who I had been with for 5 years. We had built a life together, a love so deep that I was certain nothing could ever shake us. And then there was my best friend, LLA. She was my soul sister, my confidant, the one person who knew every detail of my relationship with Daniel. The three of us were inseparable. LLA had always been there, laughing with me through my happiest moments and holding my hand through my worst. She was the one I trusted with my deepest secrets, including the plans Daniel and I had for our future. I never saw it coming, the betrayal, the lies, the way my world would shatter in a single moment. It all began on a rainy evening when Daniel came home acting different, distant. His once affectionate gaze had turned hollow, his kisses felt forced, and his embrace lacked the warmth I had once craved. I ignored the signs, convincing myself it was just stress. Then one night, my phone buzzed with a message from LLA, "We need to talk." "It's important." The pit in my stomach formed instantly. Something was off. I met LLA at our favorite cafe, the one we had gone to since college. She sat across from me, her hands shaking as she avoided my eyes. The moment she finally spoke, my heart froze. "I'm in love with Daniel," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. I laughed, thinking it was some kind of cruel joke, but the look in her eyes told me the truth before she even said another word. "We've been seeing each other for months," she admitted, her voice cracking. My world tilted. My best friend, my boyfriend, the two people I loved the most in this world had been lying to me. I couldn't breathe. My hands gripped the table, my knuckles turning white. My vision blurred with unshed tears, but I refused to let them fall. "Tell me this isn't real," I managed to whisper. But it was, and the final blow came: "We're getting married." The pain in my chest was suffocating. Betrayal doesn't just hurt, it rips you apart from the inside out. I left that cafe in a daze, stumbling through the city streets as if my body had forgotten how to function. How could they do this to me? How could the two people I loved the most tear my heart into pieces and not even flinch? I confronted Daniel that night. I expected guilt, regret, something. But instead, he had the audacity to look relieved. "I'm sorry, but I love her," he said, as if that was supposed to justify it all. I wanted to scream, cry, break something, break him. But I didn't, because I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me shattered. Instead, I simply asked, "When's the wedding?" He blinked, caught off guard. 3 months from now. 3 months. 3 months to process the fact that the love of my life had chosen someone else. 3 months to decide how I was going to handle the most humiliating betrayal of my life. But as I stood there staring at the man who had promised me forever, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to be the girl who cried over a lost love. I was going to be the girl who made sure he regretted ever letting me go. I cut them both out of my life completely. No texts, no calls, no sad longing stares. I vanished from their world, leaving them to bask in their twisted version of happiness. But what Daniel and LLA didn't know was that fate had something far greater in store for me. A month before their wedding, an unexpected invitation arrived in the mail. "Daniel and LLA cordially invite you to celebrate their union." I laughed a cold, bitter laugh. The audacity, the sheer arrogance. Did they think I'd show up sobbing, heartbroken? But instead of tearing the invitation apart, I made a decision that would shock everyone. I was going to that wedding, and I wasn't going alone. The universe has a funny way of working. Just when you think you've lost everything, it gives you exactly what you need. It happened at a charity gala I had reluctantly attended, trying to distract myself from the pain. That's where I met Adrian Knight, confident, the kind of man who commanded attention the moment he walked into a room. But more than that, he had a presence, a quiet strength. He noticed my distant stare, the sadness lingering behind my forced smiles, and instead of pity, he offered me something else. "You look like a woman who's about to rise from the ashes," he said. I smirked. "You have no idea." We talked for hours that night, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than heartbreak. Then, as the night was ending, he did something unexpected. "Marry me," he said. I nearly choked on my drink. What? His smile was wicked. Marry me, just for one night. Just long enough to make them regret everything. I thought he was crazy, insane. But as I stared into his dark, knowing eyes, I realized one thing: this was exactly the kind of revenge I needed. The plan was simple. Adrian and I would attend the wedding together. We'd arrive hand in hand, looking like the perfect newlyweds. And when Daniel saw who I had married, his entire world would come crashing down. Because Adrian Knight wasn't just some man, he was wealthy, powerful, and the last person Daniel ever expected me to end up with. This wasn't just about revenge, this was about showing them, both of them, that I was never the one who lost. I was the one who won. As the wedding day approached, I could already imagine the look on Daniel's face when he saw me walk into that venue, not as the broken woman he expected, but as Mrs. Knight. And trust me, he would never, ever forget it. The day had finally arrived, the day Daniel and LLA would say their vows, promising each other a future built on the ruins of my heartbreak. But what they didn't know was that today wasn't just their wedding day, it was my reckoning. As I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my penthouse suite, I could barely recognize the woman staring back at me. The once heartbroken girl had been replaced by someone stronger, fiercer. My reflection radiated confidence, draped in an elegant, custom-designed gown that fit me like it was made for a queen. And beside me stood Adrian Knight, the man who had turned my pain into power. Adrian adjusted the cuffs of his tailored black tuxedo, his eyes glinting with amusement as he watched me. "Are you ready to break some hearts?" he asked. I smirked, picking up the diamond bracelet he had gifted me that morning. "Oh, Adrian, I was born ready." We stepped into his sleek black car, the air between us electric. There was no turning back now. The venue was nothing short of extravagant, a grand hall adorned with cascading white roses, golden chandeliers, and an aisle long enough to make any bride feel like royalty. It was ironic, really, a picture-perfect setting for a marriage built on betrayal. The moment Adrian and I stepped into the hall, the atmosphere changed. Conversations hushed, heads turned, and whispers spread like wildfire. I could feel their eyes on me, on us. Every guest had expected me to be curled up in some dark corner, drowning in self-pity. But instead, I walked in glowing, radiant, untouchable. And then I saw him, Daniel. He was standing at the altar, dressed in an expensive suit, his hands fidgeting as he forced a smile for the guests. His expression was calm until his eyes landed on me. His jaw visibly clenched, his entire body going rigid as his gaze traveled to the man standing beside me. Adrian leaned down and whispered, "I think your ex just stopped breathing." I couldn't help but smile. LLA, standing beside Daniel in her lace wedding gown, followed his gaze. When her eyes met mine, her face paled. "What?" She barely whispered the word, her lips parting in shock. I could practically hear the thoughts racing through their minds. How did she move on so fast? Who is that man? How could she look so happy? And then came the final blow. A waiter passed by, offering champagne, and Adrian smoothly tipped 2 glasses. He handed me one before raising his own in a silent toast. Then, with an air of effortless authority, he turned to Daniel and said, "Nice place. My wife and I love grand weddings." Silence, absolute, deafening silence. Daniel blinked as if trying to process the words. His lips parted, but no sound came out. "Wife?" he finally stammered. I let the words sink in before intertwining my fingers with Adrian's, tilting my head playfully. "Oh, didn't you hear? I got married a week ago. Actually, best decision of my life." LLA gasped, her hand gripping Daniel's arm as if that would keep him grounded. His face darkened, his eyes darting between me and Adrian like he was trapped in some surreal nightmare. "You're lying," he finally bit out, his voice strained. Adrian chuckled, his confidence unwavering. "Oh, trust me, Daniel, I don't lie about things like this." A murmur swept through the crowd as people exchanged shocked glances. Some guests were even reaching for their phones, likely searching for proof. Daniel took a step forward, his expression unreadable. "Why? Why him?" The audacity of that question made me laugh. "Why not him?" I countered. "Did you think I'd stay broken forever? That I'd wait around for you?" His nostrils flared, frustration simmering beneath the surface. "You didn't love him a month ago." I took a slow sip of my champagne before replying, "And you didn't love LLA a year ago, but that didn't stop you, did it?" Daniel stiffened, his jaw tightening. LLA looked between us, her eyes wide with growing panic. Daniel, let's not make a scene, she whispered, trying to pull him back. But it was too late. Daniel wasn't listening to her anymore. His entire focus was on me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place: anger, jealousy, regret? Maybe all three. Is this about revenge? He asked, his voice dangerously low. I tilted my head, feigning innocence. Oh, Daniel, not everything is about you. His hands curled into fists. You don't even know him. Adrian smirked, placing a hand on my waist possessively. Actually, we know each other quite well. You'd be surprised how fast love can grow when two people truly connect. Daniel's eyes darkened. He was losing control, and he knew it. You married him to hurt me, he accused. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. No, Daniel, I married him because you were never worth waiting for. His face fell. For the first time since this entire disaster began, he looked truly shaken. LLA, sensing the tension, forced a nervous laugh and turned to Adrian. Mr. Knight, I don't believe we've met. What do you do? Adrian's smirk deepened. I own Knight Enterprises. The color drained from LLA's face. The Knight Enterprises? The realization hit her like a tidal wave. Adrian wasn't just any man, he was a billionaire, one of the most powerful men in the business world. I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to understand how I had gone from heartbreak to marrying a man like him. Daniel's hand clenched at his side, his knuckles turning white. You planned this, he accused. I smiled sweetly. No, Daniel, you planned this the day you betrayed me. The officiant awkwardly cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the ceremony. Shall we continue? I placed my champagne glass down and took Adrian's hand. We should get going. We have our own honeymoon to enjoy. Adrian leaned in, brushing his lips softly against my ear. Shall we give them one last show? Without hesitation, I turned to him, cupping his face as he leaned down. And then, in front of everyone, including Daniel, I kissed him passionately, unapologetically. When I pulled away, I turned back to Daniel. His face was twisted in a storm of emotions. Goodbye, Daniel, I said softly. I wish you and LLA all the happiness you deserve. With that, Adrian and I turned and walked away, leaving behind gasps, whispers, and one very shattered man. As Adrian and I walked out of the venue, the murmurs and whispers of the guests faded behind us, but I could still feel the weight of Daniel's stare burning into my back. The cool evening breeze kissed my skin as we stepped into Adrian's sleek black car. The moment the door shut, a wave of exhilaration rushed through me. Adrian turned to me, his signature smirk playing on his lips. That was quite the performance, Mrs. Knight. I chuckled, still breathless from the moment. You weren't so bad yourself, Mr. Knight. His eyes darkened with amusement. You know, I think I actually saw Daniel's soul leave his body when you kissed me. The memory sent a thrill through me. I had expected a reaction, but the look on Daniel's face, the sheer devastation, the raw mixture of shock and jealousy, it was more than I could have ever imagined. But deep down, beneath the satisfaction, there was a part of me that wondered, was this really over? That night, Adrian and I returned to his penthouse, our penthouse. Though our marriage had begun as a strategic move, Adrian had been nothing but a gentleman. He never pushed, never pried, and I had to admit, I liked being around him. As I stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights, Adrian joined me, holding out a glass of wine. You're thinking about him, aren't you? He asked. I hesitated, then sighed. I thought this would be the end. That seeing me happy, seeing me with you, would be enough for him to let go. Adrian swirled his drink, his eyes sharp. Men like Daniel don't let go easily, Ava. Especially when they realize what they lost. I looked at him. You think he'll come back? Adrian smirked. Oh, sweetheart, I think he's already planning his next move. And just like that, as if the universe wanted to prove him right, my phone vibrated on the table. It was Daniel. I stared at the screen, my heart thumping. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend he no longer existed. But another part, one I wasn't proud of, needed to hear what he had to say. I answered. Ava, his voice was strained, almost hesitant. Can we talk? I leaned against the railing, my expression unreadable. Talk? Funny, Daniel, I don't remember us doing much talking when you were sneaking around with my best friend. He exhaled sharply. I made a mistake. I rolled my eyes. Oh, really? Which part? Betraying me or actually thinking I'd still care? I was stupid, Ava, he admitted, desperation creeping into his tone. I don't even know why I did it. I thought I loved her, but when I saw you today. Stop, I cut him off, my voice cold. You don't get to do this. You don't get to regret me now that I've moved on. Silence stretched between us. Then, finally, he whispered, Do you love him? I didn't hesitate. Yes. I wasn't sure if it was entirely true, but I wanted it to be. And judging by the sharp intake of breath on the other end, my words had hit exactly where they needed to. Goodbye, Daniel. I hung up. I turned to find Adrian watching me, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. And how did our friend take the news? He asked. I sighed, rubbing my temples. He sounded broken. I think he actually regretted it. Adrian chuckled low and dangerous. Regret is useless when the damage is already done. He wasn't wrong, but something told me Daniel wasn't done yet. And I was right. The next morning, my phone lit up with notifications, articles, social media posts, speculation. Who is Adrian Knight's mysterious bride? Ex-fiancé of the groom steals the spotlight at wedding. Was this the ultimate revenge wedding? My heart pounded as I scrolled through the media frenzy. Pictures of Adrian and me at the wedding had gone viral. People were digging into my past, my relationship with Daniel, the scandal of it all. And then, at the very bottom of the page, I saw a post from Daniel himself. Some mistakes can never be undone, but some love stories deserve a second chance. I won't stop until I fix what I broke. I sucked in a breath. Adrian, who had been reading over my shoulder, let out a slow whistle. Looks like your ex is ready for round 2. I clenched my jaw. He can try. Days passed, and Daniel's attempts to contact me became relentless. Messages, flowers, a long email pouring his heart out. I ignored them all. Then one evening, as Adrian and I were leaving a charity gala, Daniel appeared. He was waiting outside, leaning against his car, his eyes locked on me the moment I stepped out. We need to talk, he said. Adrian's hand rested on my lower back, a silent warning. She has nothing to say to you, Daniel. Daniel's jaw tightened. Stay out of this. Adrian laughed, a dangerous glint in his eyes. Oh, Daniel, I don't think you understand. She's mine now, and I don't share. Something inside Daniel snapped. He took a step forward, his voice raw. Ava, tell me right here, right now, if you never loved me. If you feel nothing. Look me in the eye and say it. I swallowed hard. I had waited for this moment, dreamed of the day he would beg for me. But now that it was here, why did my chest feel tight? Daniel's gaze was pleading. Did I mean nothing to you? Adrian's grip on me tightened, grounding me. And finally, I found my voice. Daniel, I took a breath, then delivered the final blow. You meant everything to me until the moment you betrayed me. His face crumbled, and just like that, I turned my back on him for the last time. Adrian and I drove off, the night air thick with unspoken words. But as I stared out the window, something nagged at me. Daniel wouldn't stop. He had something planned. I could feel it. And I was right. 2 weeks later, my world was flipped upside down. I walked into my office expecting another normal day. Instead, I found a single envelope on my desk. Inside was a letter, and the moment I read the first few lines, my blood turned to ice. If I can't have you, no one will. This isn't over, Ava. Not even close. My hands trembled as I reread the letter. The words were sharp, calculated, filled with an ominous promise. A chill ran down my spine. For 4 weeks, Daniel had been relentless with messages, calls, and desperate pleas to meet. But this was something else. This wasn't love or regret. This was obsession. I swallowed the lump in my throat and gripped the letter, my mind racing. Was it just a desperate attempt to scare me, or was he truly capable of something worse? I had no idea, but I wasn't going to wait to find out. That evening, I sat in Adrian's penthouse, staring blankly at the skyline. The weight of the letter pressed heavy on my chest. Adrian poured himself a glass of whiskey, his expression dark as he studied me. You're thinking about him, he said. I exhaled, placing the letter on the coffee table between us. He sent this today. Adrian picked it up, his jaw tightening as he read. When he looked at me again, his usual playful smirk was gone. That's a threat, Ava. I nodded. I know. He set the glass down, his hands curling into fists. He doesn't get to scare you. I shook my head. I don't think he's trying to scare me. I think he's trying to break me. Adrian sat beside me, his arm resting behind me on the couch. Then we remind him that you're unbreakable. I decided not to respond to Daniel. Giving him attention was giving him power. But my silence only fueled his obsession. The following week, the signs became impossible to ignore. A bouquet of black roses arrived at my office. The card attached had a single word, mine. There was a shadow outside my apartment at odd hours, and a car that seemed to follow me wherever I went. Adrian tightened security around me, hiring private guards without a second thought. But then one night, things escalated. I was leaving a business event with Adrian when I heard his voice. Ava. I turned, and there he was. Daniel stood near the exit, dressed in all black, his eyes wild with something I couldn't quite place: desperation, anger, madness. Adrian immediately stepped between us, his presence an unspoken warning. You have 5 seconds to walk away. But Daniel wasn't looking at him. He was looking at me. Tell me you don't miss me, he said, his voice raw. I forced my heart to stay steady. I don't. His jaw clenched. I don't believe you. I'm tired of the games, Daniel. Whatever this is, it's over. It's been over. You made your choice. You married LLA, so stop. His expression darkened. I made a mistake. I should have chosen you. Adrian let out a low chuckle. Now that she's with me, you suddenly remember you loved her? Pathetic. Daniel's eyes flicked to Adrian, pure hatred swimming in them. Stay out of this, Knight. You don't know her like I do. Adrian smirked, his hand resting possessively on my waist. I know she's mine now, and that's all that matters. Daniel's nostrils flared, his hands clenched at his sides as if he was barely holding himself back. This isn't over, Ava, he finally said, his voice laced with something dark and final. You'll see. And with that, he turned and disappeared into the night. Days passed, but my anxiety only grew. I could feel Daniel's presence even when I didn't see him. And then one night, the worst happened. I was alone in my office, finishing up paperwork when the lights flickered. The building was nearly empty, most of the staff had left hours ago. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. I stood and grabbed my purse, determined to leave. But as I reached for the door handle, the door suddenly slammed shut. My breath caught. Who's there? Silence. Then slow, deliberate footsteps. I turned, my heart hammering, as Daniel stepped out of the shadows. Ava, he murmured, his gaze dark and unreadable. I took a step back. You need to leave. He tilted his head. I can't. I swallowed hard, reaching for my phone, but he was faster. He grabbed it from my hands and tossed it across the room. Panic rose in my chest. You don't belong with him, Daniel continued, taking slow steps toward me. He's not your future, Ava. I am. I shook my head. You don't get to decide that. He let out a bitter laugh. You think he loves you? You think he won't leave you like I did? My back hit the desk. I had nowhere to go. And then, just as fear gripped me, the door burst open. Adrian's eyes darkened the second he saw me cornered. In a flash, he was across the room, grabbing Daniel by the collar and slamming him against the wall. Touch her again and I swear you won't walk out of here, Adrian growled, his voice lethal. Daniel's lips curled into a sick smirk. So protective. You must really think she loves you. Adrian didn't hesitate. His fist connected with Daniel's jaw. The sickening crack echoed through the office. Daniel stumbled back, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Adrian loomed over him. Come near her again and I'll destroy you. Daniel wiped his mouth, his eyes gleaming with something twisted. This isn't over. But as he turned to leave, I saw it in his eyes. This wasn't just a game anymore. This was war. Later that night, Adrian sat beside me in the penthouse, a glass of whiskey in his hand. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded. I will be. He exhaled, setting his glass down. We need to end this. I looked at him. How? His gaze hardened. We take everything from him, the way he tried to take everything from you. A slow, dangerous smile spread across my lips. Let's do it. Because Daniel thought he could break me. He thought his obsession would bring me back. But he was about to learn the hard way. I wasn't the girl he left behind. I was the woman who would destroy him. Daniel thought he could play his twisted game forever. He thought he could haunt my life, linger like a ghost from the past, and that eventually I would break. He was wrong. I wasn't the naive woman he once manipulated. I wasn't the heartbroken ex he could reel back in with whispered regrets and empty promises. No, I was someone else now. And it was time Daniel learned exactly who he was dealing with. Adrian leaned against his desk, arms crossed, as he studied me with a dark smirk. So, tell me, Mrs. Knight, how do we destroy your ex? I took a deep breath, the pieces of my plan fitting together like a perfectly crafted puzzle. We take away everything he values, his reputation, his career, his money. Everything. Adrian's smile deepened. Now that's my kind of revenge. Daniel had built a name for himself in the corporate world. His investments, his company, it was his entire identity. So I hit him where it hurt. First, with Adrian's connections, I dug into every shady business deal Daniel had ever made, every unethical contract, every underhanded agreement. It didn't take long to find dirt, and when we did, we leaked it. The media pounced like vultures. Headlines screamed scandal. Investors panicked, and within a week, Daniel's company was under investigation. But that was just the beginning. Daniel had always prided himself on his perfect image, flawless, untouchable. But once the media got their hands on the scandal, the facade shattered. Reporters swarmed his office, clients cut ties, and the best part, LLA. I hadn't forgotten about her. She had played her role in my betrayal, and now she was feeling the consequences. One morning, as I sipped coffee in Adrian's penthouse, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was LLA. How could you do this? Do you know what's happening to Daniel? His company is falling apart. He's barely sleeping, barely eating. This isn't just revenge, Ava. This is cruelty. I stared at the message, feeling nothing. She wanted sympathy after everything they did to me? I typed a single response, should have thought of that before you stabbed me in the back. Enjoy the fallout, Mrs. Daniel. Then I blocked her. By the third week, Daniel was drowning. His financial losses had skyrocketed, and his reputation was in shambles. But I wasn't done. I still had one last move to make, and it was the most personal of all. One evening, Adrian and I attended an elite charity gala, an event I knew Daniel had planned to be at. I walked in with Adrian, our presence commanding the room. I could feel the stares, hear the whispers. Everyone had seen the headlines. But the best moment was when I saw Daniel standing alone at the bar, his once confident posture slumped, his eyes filled with barely concealed rage. He saw me. He saw Adrian. And I knew in that moment he realized he had lost completely. I approached him, my expression unreadable. Daniel. He looked at me, something broken in his gaze. You did this. I smiled. No, Daniel, you did this. The moment you betrayed me, you set all of this in motion. His lips pressed into a thin line. I loved you. I tilted my head. And I loved you until I didn't. For the first time, Daniel had nothing to say. No anger, no excuses, just silence. I turned to Adrian, slipping my hand into his. Shall we? Adrian smirked at Daniel, then leaned down to whisper in my ear, just loud enough for him to hear. You're breathtaking when you destroy a man. I laughed, letting Adrian guide me away. And as I glanced back one last time, I saw it, the undeniable truth in Daniel's eyes. He finally understood. I wasn't his anymore. I never would be again. That night, as Adrian and I stood on the penthouse balcony, the city lights twinkling below us, he wrapped an arm around my waist. So, how does it feel? He murmured. I smiled. Liberating. Adrian chuckled, tilting my chin up to look at me. I have to say, you're dangerous when you're vengeful. I leaned into him. And you love it. His lips brushed against mine. You have no idea. And as he kissed me, I realized something. Daniel had tried to break me, but in the end, I had won. Not just the revenge, not just the power. I had won the best kind of victory. The war was over. Daniel had been stripped of everything he held dear, his power, his reputation, his control. And I was finally free. For the first time in months, I could breathe without the weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest. No more restless nights filled with anger, no more waking up with the ghost of Daniel's touch haunting me. I had taken my pain and turned it into power, and now I was standing at the edge of a new life, one that had nothing to do with him. I stared out at the city from the penthouse balcony, the cool night air brushing against my skin. Adrian stood behind me, his arms slipping around my waist as he rested his chin on my shoulder. "You're thinking again," he murmured. I smiled softly. "I was just realizing something." "Oh, and what's that?" I turned to face him, my fingers trailing along the lapels of his suit. "I won." His smirk was slow, dark. "Of course you did. Did you ever doubt it?" I exhaled, shaking my head. "No, but it feels different now. I thought revenge would be the most satisfying thing in the world, but standing here with you, I realize letting go is even better." Adrian's expression softened. "You finally put him in the past." I nodded. "And I'm never looking back." The next morning, I made a decision. One last thing needed to be done before I could fully close this chapter of my life. I needed to see Daniel one last time. I didn't go alone. Adrian came with me, a silent pillar of strength at my side. Not because I needed protection, but because he knew this was about closure. Daniel's life had unraveled publicly, but I hadn't seen him in weeks. When I arrived at his apartment, the man who opened the door was nothing like the Daniel I once knew. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow, his jaw shadowed with stubble. He looked like a man who had lost everything. "Ava," his voice cracked, as if just saying my name hurt. I stepped inside, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor. The air was thick with silence. "This is the last time we'll ever speak," I said, my tone firm. "After today, I don't want you near me. No messages, no apologies, no more games." Daniel swallowed hard, his hands clenching at his sides. "You really hate me, don't you?" I tilted my head. "No, Daniel, I don't hate you." He blinked, surprised. "I just don't care anymore." His entire body stiffened at those words. I walked past him, turning to leave, but he grabbed my wrist, one final act of desperation. "Eva, please. Tell me you felt something. Tell me some part of you still." Adrian's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Take your hand off her." Daniel looked up, locking eyes with Adrian, the man who had taken his place. And in that moment, he knew he had lost me for good. He let go. I stepped back, standing beside Adrian, my heart steady. "Goodbye, Daniel." I walked out of that apartment without looking back, and for the first time in a long time, I felt light. That night, Adrian and I took a spontaneous flight to Santorini. No plans, no schedules, just the two of us and the vast blue sea stretching beyond the horizon. As we walked along the edge of a cliffside villa, Adrian pulled me close. "No regrets?" he asked. I shook my head, smiling. "None." He studied me for a moment, then said, "You know, I never asked. Why did you agree to marry me that night?" I thought back to that moment, the chaos, the heartbreak, the wild, reckless decision that changed everything. "Because," I said, my fingers tracing his jaw, "you were the only one who saw me for who I really was. Not just a woman scorned, not just a pawn in a revenge game. You saw me, and you never doubted I'd rise from the ashes." Adrian's lips curled into a slow, knowing smirk. "And you did." I laughed. "I did." And then, as the sun dipped into the sea, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, he leaned in. And this time, when Adrian kissed me, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving a point. It was real. It was us. Daniel had been my past, a painful lesson, a betrayal that once defined me. But Adrian was my future. And as I stood there, wrapped in his arms, I realized something beautiful. I wasn't just someone's revenge story. I wasn't a woman scorned. I was a woman reborn, and I had chosen love, not because I needed it to heal, but because it was finally mine to give.